Hi everyone, welcome back to another week on the Brush by Brandy YouTube channel. My name is Brandy, and this week we're going to be working on this piece that's sitting here right beside me. And this one's really special, you guys. I thought this was so cool that I get the opportunity to do this. So the customer contacted me, and this is actually for a friend who's having a baby, and they had the baby through fertility struggles and health issues. And there's a beautiful, healthy baby boy that is so exciting. And so she wants to do this as a gift for her friend. And so the inspiration that she gave me was pastel colors and zoo animals, which is our nursery theme. So I'm going to be using the Hello Baby transfer from Redesign with Prima. It's got zoo animals. I've got a lion in here. I've got a panda bear. I've got a fox, a bunny. There's different animals. So I'm going to choose which ones depending on how well they fit my piece when I get to that stage. I'm going to be blending a new paint brand tonight. It's actually a beautiful paint brand. I'm really enjoying using it from Two Chicks and a Tool Belt. So we're going to check out their paint tonight, Chalky Chicks Furniture Paint. And we're going to blend over some spindles, which is a bear. It's super time consuming, but it's a beautiful look. And I think this is going to be a gift that's really treasured for a long time. So don't be scared of taking on challenging projects like chairs, blending over spindles, a vintage high chair. But let's go ahead and see where this one goes. Let's get started. Here's where I started on this vintage high chair. I picked this up off my local Facebook marketplace. It definitely had been used and loved, and so it needed some repairs before I could get started with painting. I started off by removing all of the hardware and placing that to be cleaned in a 50-50 mixture of white vinegar and water, and then giving my chair a really good cleaning using Greenie's cleaner. Cleaning is also a really good time to get acquainted with my piece, so I found that this had some repairs that I needed to do on the seat. I went ahead and gave it a good scuff sanding using my Surf Prep sander and one of their sponge pads, and these give a really good way to sand pieces that have spindles like this because the sponge is able to conform to the round surface. I love my Surf Prep sander because of the versatility of the abrasives. I've been able to change them out depending on what it is I need to sand. All right, in my sanding, I found a little bubble in my veneer. This pushes down so I know it's not fully attached with my glue anymore. And so I'm going to need to make a hole so that I can inject a little bit of wood glue underneath. So I'm going to slice this with a sharp razor knife. And I did it fairly long, and that gives me a little gap that I can slip some glue underneath using a razor blade. I'm going to slip my glue underneath. I'm going to weight this down overnight, and when I come back this will be dry and I'll be able to start my painting. I also have a couple spots back here where the veneer is starting to lift. There's a couple gaps, one here and then one here. And I'm going to do the same thing. Take a little bit of wood glue onto my razor blade, slip it underneath there. I'll put a clamp, and then tomorrow that'll be all glued. With my glue on and my clamps on, I'm going to go ahead and apply a coat of primer to the rest of the body of this piece. I'm using light gray primer from Wiseowl, and I'm doing this for a couple reasons. I want to change this color to lighten it up a little bit so my paint colors cover better, and the light gray just does that. And then I also want it to help prevent bleed through from this wood that might discolor my paint over time. Here's where my chair is after 2 coats of primer. It already looks so much better. My repairs are all done. This is ready for some paint. So this paint project was inspired by some rocking chairs that I'd done in the past. This finish comes out really pretty and I love it on chairs, but it is a bear to do. So you're going to see in this video that I'm going to flip this high chair up and around like a rag doll a million times to get to all the different angles of the spindles underneath, behind, sideways, and every which way. My first coat of paint I did live on camera with you guys, so this is actually my second coat of paint. And what I did is I reversed my order from on the second coat. The first coat I started with the white at the top and I came down to the bottom. I'm starting with my darkest color on the bottom this time and working my way up. And what that does is I just tend to be heavy-handed, I notice with where I start. And so if I reverse the order, I tend to correct that a little bit on my second coat. I'm using Klingon brushes here. I have a brush for each color, and I'm also using a mister bottle of water to work those colors together. So I brush the color on where it belongs, and then where they meet up in the middle, I'll brush the colors together using a little bit of water and a dry neutral brush. But remember, this has 4 legs, so every time I do this, I gotta repeat it times 4. So this was a long process. It's kind of a bear to do, but again, this was totally worth it. This is actually going to be a baby gift, and I think it's really sentimental and sweet. A couple tips for blending colors together like this. I would recommend as few transitions as you can get on a leg. So notice I really only have 1 or 2 color transitions up the leg. I'm not doing 5 color transitions all the way up. And then the closer in tone that your colors are, the easier they're going to be able to blend together. So this darker blue blending into a slightly lighter shade, it wasn't so bad. I found the Chalky Chicks paint really nice to work with. It's very consistent with most chalky style paints. I enjoyed the coverage of it. The colors are really nice. They have a great color selection. It did blend very well, so I don't have anything negative to say about this paint at all. It was a nice paint to work with. I even found that colors that usually get difficult coverage, like yellow, I got pretty decent coverage on this yellow. It only took me 2 coats, just like the same as it did of any of the other colors. So I left this section and I just sped it up a little bit so that you guys could see how much I had to move this chair around to be able to get to all the different angles and blend every single spindle on this piece. It was quite a time-consuming process. Whew, that was quite a workout. I'm glad to be back inside working on this piece. My paint is nice and dry. My second coat has had time to dry overnight, and now I'm going to be working on a design on the tray for this piece. We're going to be adding a lot of personalization to this tray, and so I wanted to make a custom scroll. We're going to be adding the baby's name and birth information to this, and what I kind of thought of is even after the time passes, when they're done using this as a high chair, that the tray could be kept as a keepsake in this family. So one thing you'll notice here that I'm using is colored pencils. So in all the art mediums that I used, I did take art classes when I was in high school, and one of the mediums I enjoyed the most was colored pencil. So I really enjoyed doing colored pencil work. And in this case, I'm going to draw out this design on the tray. And the chalk paint makes the perfect base for pencils. So if you have another favorite art medium that you love, be it watercolors or oil pastels or whatever it is, don't be afraid to pull it out and use it sometimes on your furniture finishes. I'm using a high quality color pencil. These are from Prismacolor, and I'm using a variety of colors. I do have a bunch of sets and some graphite pencils. So I'm slowly gradating the colors, a darker edge that graduates into a white in the center so it looks like an old parchment scroll. What I did to decide the size of this is I held my transfer up that I want to put on the tray of this, and then I looked at the space I had left over, and I tried to use that space to fill with the scroll. I drew this out by hand, and my best tip is to draw it in chalk. If you draw it in chalk, because graphite pencil can bleed through underneath chalk paint. So if I needed to paint this over at any point and I had used a graphite pencil, that could tend to bleed through. So by drawing it out in chalk, I was able to erase it. And then also when you're using colored pencils, make sure you have a nice high quality white eraser. I had a Prismacolor eraser here, so any errors that I made, I was able to just erase those with the nice high quality eraser. You don't want to use the pink one that's on the back of your kids' pencils because that will mark your chalk paint and you'll end up having to touch your paint up. Once I felt like my scroll was done, I went over to my Silhouette vinyl cutter, and I know just enough about my Silhouette to get myself into some trouble, but I do know how to cut out names and stuff like that. So I measured out the size of my scroll, and I printed out my font in a size that would fit in my scroll, and then I transferred it onto my surface. I use painter's tape to transfer, and that's just a quick, easy solution that I usually have readily available. I placed them in the center of my scroll, and then I came back through and I'm going to weed through to remove all of the inside of my letters. This is just making myself a custom stencil. I'm going to stencil the name and birth information onto this tray. This is just another medium that you can combine with furniture finishes and use your Silhouette vinyl cutter to create different looks and different finishes that really customize a piece of furniture. Once I weeded out all the letters from the inside of my stencil, I'm going to use a little bit of chalk paste from Redesign with Prima. And chalk paste is basically a thickened version of paint that I was able to just go over. And the thickened version means that it's not going to bleed through and leave any messy outline around my stencil. I added transfers onto the seat of my piece and also onto the tray. This is the Hello Baby and Sweet Dreams transfer from Redesign with Prima. These soft animals also go with the zoo animal theme that's being used in this nursery. I'm going to seal the seat and the tray using a little bit of clear resin. I'm using Amazing Clear Cast Plus from Alumilite, and I chose this because it has UV protection that will resist yellowing. I pour it over the seat and also the tray, and then I'm going to use a torch to get out any bubbles in my resin finish. I was really hoping I could get my resin done in one coat, but this little guy right here, this little nut, determined that I needed to do 2 coats. I picked him out and went ahead and poured a second one. Here's how I do the edges. I fill those last, and then I go through and I scrape underneath to keep any drips from forming there. You can see how glossy this is. It's also going to be highly wipeable. So on this tray, I had to make a couple judgment calls, and one of them was when I originally did the print, I had the letters PM after the time, but it didn't fit on my scroll. When I shrunk this line of text down to a smaller font, it then didn't look like it fit in with the other lines of font, so I chose to go ahead and remove that. I played around with adding it in smaller underneath. I drew it in chalk, and I didn't like how it looked. It looked like an afterthought, so I chose to leave that off. I also printed out the word inches, and I ended up cutting that down to to the abbreviation as well. So sometimes you have to just make some judgment calls on what you're going to add to your piece. I sealed my seat and tray with resin, but I sealed the rest of the body in regular clear coat, and this piece is done. What do you guys think? I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You can find links for everything I use in the description for this post. I hope you'll click that subscribe button, and you can find more Brush by Brandy on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, and on my website at brushbybrandy.com.